Hello, Data Voyagers. I am Igor Alcantara, and I'm here to show you some tips and tricks for one specific Qlik certification exam, the Qlik Sense Business Analyst. This is the second video in our series helping people to get prepared for Qlik certifications. So if you haven't watched the first video, which is an overall tips and tricks and how to prepare, how to schedule, how to take the Qlik exams in the new Qlik learning platform, I highly recommend to watch that video first. You will find the link to the video in the description of this video on YouTube. Now, before we get started, it is important that before you take the exam, you get some field experience. You work with Qlik, in that case, from a perspective of a business analyst. And so I will go over how the exam is organized and some of the topics you might study. This is based on my experience in taking the exams multiple times and also my experience as director of education at IPC Global, where I help other people to prepare for the exam. Once they take the exam, they come back to me and we discuss some of the questions they saw, etc. So based on that knowledge, this video is not like a guarantee that you will pass or do well in exam. It depends on you to study. It is just a help to guide you through, but don't base 100% on this video. Again, you gotta do the work. So let's get started. And it is I intend to this video not to be very long. So let's talk about the Qlik Sense Business Analyst. But before, make sure you check our website, datavoyagers.net. We have our blog, we have our podcast. I'll ask you to subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, whatever you get your podcast from. So make sure you subscribe and also subscribe to this YouTube channel. So I would like to get started of the structure of the exam itself. So first of all, how much time do you have? You have 2 hours to take this exam. So you have 120 minutes to basically answer 50 questions. Those 50 questions are multi-choice questions. So that's basically the structure of the exam. The exam changed in the last couple of years, and what I'm showing you is based on the date of this recording. You know, the exams, they change once in a while, once a year, once every 2 years. So this might be not as accurate if you're watching this like in 2027, 2028, and into the future. But it will give you a pretty good idea how to get prepared. You need at least 62% score in order to pass. So that means that you have to get it right 31 questions at least. It doesn't seem like a very high score, but if you don't have a lot of experience in Qlik, it is not easy to get that 62% score. What I recommend, and that's my personal recommendation for time per question, that's the TPQ, is 2 minutes. So I do not recommend you to spend more than 2 minutes per question because that will give you time to answer all the questions, but then it'll give you some extra time at the end so you can review questions. I mentioned that in the first video when I give like overall tips, but again, keep a piece of paper and a pen on your side. So write down the number of the questions that you're not 100% sure that you want to check after. Now, after 1 hour of exam, half of the exam, you have to be completed 30 questions. If you haven't, at least 30 questions, it might be more. If you haven't, it means that you need to like go a little faster going forward. So not necessarily you will spend 2 minutes per question. Some questions will be easier, will be more straightforward, less text to read, so be less time. Some questions there are more text to read, you need to think more, will be more than 2 minutes. Which is okay. If you think it's taking too long, write it down, pick a best option, move forward. Don't spend too much time in a question, at least at the beginning, at least in the first half. Keep the question, and then so at least you get as many questions answered as possible, and you can revisit that because you have, if you do 2 minutes per question, you have at the end 20 minutes, which is plenty of time to review those questions that we wrote down. You don't have time to review the full exam, so write down the questions you need to review. For these exams specifically, be careful with formatting issues. When I took the exam, maybe and luckily, when you're taking the exam, those issues were fixed. But when I took the exam, and I took the exam actually recently because I renewed my certification. The last time I took recently, there were some formatting issues, like lack of spaces, like words that were together, or lack of line break. So make sure that those questions will require a little bit of more time. Still on the topic of the exam structure, what are the exam topics? So basically, we have four different sections, and I broke down what is the percentage of the exam and how many questions each section has. So identifying requirements, 30% of the exam, just as developed applications. Both of them have 14 questions each. If you get 100% of these two sections, you don't have everything to pass, but we pretty close. But of course, it's not realistically thinking that everybody will get like 100% of those two sections. Identifying the requirements is it's one of the, I think it is the more complicated because it's not like straightforward syntax application or like chart types, etc. It's more nuance. So identifying requirements, it's I think it requires more knowledge of the product and the different products. And then we got design application. There will be things like creating charts, for example, what kind of charts to choose, and prepare and load data, like how do I load an Excel file? What are the properties that I have? For example, I do want to remove a certain columns, and there's a large number of columns. How do I do it? That so those are the other sections. 10, 20, 12 questions for design application, 10 questions for prepare and load data. But that's basically the structure of the document. Let me do a quick change here. Let me remove my camera so then we can read everything. My camera was on top of this. All right. Now, moving forward, let's talk about what to study. And I think this is not everything you should study, but if you nail all of these topics, you have a pretty good chance of passing the exam and doing pretty well in the exam. This is based on my recollection of the questions that I answer and people that I talk to. Questions they answer. They're not always the same questions. The Qlik exams, they have like a bank of like hundreds of questions, and then 50 questions will be respecting those different four sections. 50 questions will be basically sorted and ranked, and then basically will placed on the exam. All right, so what to study? I think one of the most important topic is when to use each type of chart. Like when should I use a bar chart, a line chart, combo chart, histogram, distribution chart, all of those kind of charts, tree map, map. So it is important. And if you have access to Qlik Learning, you can go there, and there are trainings for each one of the chart types. But understanding when to use them, like if I have one dimension, two measures, if you want to compare two measures, like there will be a scatter plot, for example. If I have a time dimension, there will be a line chart. So understanding when to use each one of them, and which includes like which charts allow me to have two dimensions, which charts allows me to have more than two dimensions, and two measures, more than two measures, some of them only one measure, those kind of things. So understanding how to use all of those charts and what is the difference between one of them, it's a big part of the exam. Which also includes difference between dimensions and measures. What is dimension? What is a measure? So there will be questions where the requirements will be you have to show a visualization, a chart that shows A, B, and C, and how you will set up the chart. So we'll say, oh, I'll pick A as a dimension, B and C as measures, for example. So understanding that it is important. And given a requirement, what are the dimensions and measure, which is basically what I mentioned. Now, what is a variable? When to use a variable? And input fields. Input field meaning the extension, the custom object input field. So how to use it, how to configure, what are the different options of visualizations like the slider, the text, and the buttons, all of that. Understanding that is also part of the exam. Like I want to do like a what if scenario, simulations, that kind of stuff. How can I set up using variables and input fields? Some specifics that I remember. For example, I'm doing a line chart. How do I add forecast? Do I add the forecast in the measure, in the dimension, that kind of stuff? So it is important not to memorize all of that because it is easy to forget, but actually do exercise, get some data, build some training exercise apps, and do those things. So then it's easier to memorize and remember when you're taking the exam. Inside Advisor, I remember when I took the exam, there were a few questions about Inside Advisor, including vocabulary, business module, when to use Inside Advisor, type of analysis in Inside Advisor, like ranking, clustering, all of those different types of analysis when we use each one of them. Of course, bookmarks, storytelling, how you improve application performance. Do I reduce the unused rows? Do I reduce unused columns? Do I break applications in one, multiple applications, depending on the use case? So this is another part of the exam. What is concatenate? What is join? What is the difference? When to use concatenate? When to use join? In the script, in Data Manager, which I'll discuss in a minute. Smart Search, when to use, what the Smart Search does. Can I type like a question in Smart Search, just like I would do inside Advisor or Qlik Answers, so that kind of stuff. Understanding requirements, I mentioned before. You will be given requirements and you have to understand what is the best solution. There might be two or more options that look correct. Think about what is the optimal one. What is the like long term, the like best practice one? Alternate states. There's a typo. There's not alternative states. Alternate states. What it is, when to use, how to set up on the alternate state creation and on the object itself. Data manager. What is data manager? When should you use data manager? What features does it has? Like when I go to a certain table that I want to add that certain table in data manager, what can I do? So there's like the replace option, there is the bucket options, or all of those. It's good to understand the different questions. Actually, if you get like each type of chart of data manager, you will get a good number of questions right. Where to find stuff, including like the concatenate, the join. How do I know what is the data profiling? How do I know how many rows do I have? How do I add filters in Data Manager? All of that. And also when to use Data Manager versus load script editor. I remember just one question about load script editor. It was something where more advanced that we couldn't do in Data Manager. It's good to understand that. Master items. What are master items? What are the different types, like the dimension, the measure, and the visualization master items? When should you use master items? Which drives me to color properties. Like, for example, if I want to specify specific colors for dimension values, let's say I want North America to have a certain color, South America to have a certain color, then I need a dimension master item. So color properties includes that, but also the color expression in some charts, in the appearance of some charts. So how to work with color properties. Expression. So there will be some questions about counts, sums, etc. And other expressions, and master expressions in combination to that. And also there are some questions about some custom objects, some extensions like layout container, network, funnel chart, and others, not limited to those, but those default Qlik ones. Basis of section access. I don't remember any question about syntax. You might not get as lucky as I did, but understanding the basis, when to use it, what is the purpose of section access, because there was some requirements like about the understanding, identifying requirements, where the answer could be related to section access. Not necessarily will be, but could be. Basis of set analysis. There are not a lot of questions about the syntax of set analysis, but basically when to use set analysis, when not to use set analysis. Loading data, I mentioned before, like data connections, loading data from Excel, for example, or maybe questions like that. And when loading data from Excel, what can you do? How you define the delimiter? It also includes delimited files like CSV, for example. Some files where is fixed size, or some files that are semicolon separator. How you set those up, how you remove columns, can you rename columns, can you filter rows, those kind of things. Or even filter columns. Can you not? How you remove, let's say you have a 100 columns that has certain syntax. Can you remove all of those or not? And finally, data model viewer. What is the difference between data model viewer and data manager? When to use, what do you have that? Can you edit stuff in data model viewer? By the way, you cannot. Or can you just view stuff? Can you create master items from there? Can you not? What is subset ratio? When can you use it? What is density? All of those in regards to data model view. So those are the topics. If you nail those topics, you probably get pretty close to 100% in the exam. Of course, there might be topics that I'm not listed here because there's a big, the new questions, are coming once in a while. So you might get one and other questions. But if you nail this, you have a pretty good chance of passing. Of course, I cannot guarantee that because that's on you. But if you really, those are like a study guide. So, and I hope you find this helpful. And if you do, please share this. If you use this and you find helpful, you take the exam, you pass the exam, send us a message, share the video in your network, in your social media, LinkedIn, etc., so other people can be benefited from this. And again, go to datavoyagers.net, find everything that I mentioned before. We also have a store where we have like mouse pads, stickers, t-shirts. We add in t-shirts once in a while. Cool design, not only data voyages related, but like cool, funny design and all that. So this is the first exam that we are covering. I hope you find this useful, and see you next time. Keep exploring